mean, I knew Elon was not going to be happy, but the reality is, you know, the board, they basically need to now step it up. And I think it's something where, I hear from shareholders around the world, right, on Tesla. And as one of the biggest supporters of Elon and Tesla, it was time to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to now put a new structure. And actually, one of them, that we talked about in terms of the three things that we suggested is actually something Musk wants in terms of 25% voting rights. And what I view as will ultimately be an XAI merger potentially. But second, third, the political gambles and this sideshow, it can't continue.
Analysts seemed totally fine with Elon Musk. And correct me if I'm wrong, they seemed totally fine with him when he was getting along well with President Trump. And it seemed like the president's policies would favor his companies. Is that fair to say?
That's 100%. I mean, I viewed it as and we talked about it, the best that ever happened to Musk at that time was Trump getting into the White House. And obviously, you could argue Trump doesn't get into the White House if it's not for Musk. But like a lot of things, it took on a life of its own. Doge, BFFs, spending no time with Tesla, Mar-a-Lago, DC Doge, the brand issues. That ultimately is why then Musk had to take a step back and basically leave the Trump administration. But in your wildest nightmare, no one expected, hey, let's triple down, start a third political party, where now Trump actually becomes a foe, Republican Party becomes a foe. And that just becomes more of an overhang for Tesla.
So the board as it exists now, is this the board that you think can bring about the necessary changes and set the ground rules as you are calling for Tesla? And Jack Hartung, who has been CFO of of Chipotle, excuse me. Kimball Reeve Musk is on it. Jim Murdoch, of course, Elon, Robin Denholm, an Australian business executive, former accountant, chair of the Tesla board. So I'm just trying to think, is this the board that you think can execute the changes that need to be done?
Well, they don't have a choice. Now, look, is this?
What do you mean they don't have a choice?
Because they don't have a choice where sometimes boards, look, if you go back to history of Tesla, let Elon does what he do, you can never argue a bet against him. And that's been the MO, right? That's been the DNA. The problem is that essentially the clock strikes midnight when now it comes to these political ventures and endeavors, as well as the time spent at Tesla. The board, you're not going to have a major change or makeup in a board that would take many years. The board now, as a public company, needs to, new pay package, we talked about in 25% voting shares, but then establish the guardrails because it's a public company and shareholders are demanding, and the stock reflects changes that need to be made.
The board certainly is part of it, but I think a bigger picture question that I have is an existential one about Tesla, Dan, and that's with regard to Chinese competition. And we've seen sales get hammered over the last year, and that really the narrative has been around Musk and his association with politics, whether we're talking about that in the US or about that in Europe. But what about the China factor? Does Tesla have what it takes to compete around the world with Chinese EVs?
They have what it takes with Musk. In other words, Musk is the biggest asset for Tesla.
But they don't have the products, but they don't have products that compete at those price points and with that tech.
Yeah. So on that point, look, as someone that spends time in China, like competition, BYD, NIO, Xpeng, everything we've seen, clearly it's become much more of a competitive market. I continue to view that Tesla is still a gold standard globally when it comes to EVs. I think when it comes to China, look, the big game right now that they're trying to win, it's not necessarily about deliveries. It's about, can they win the autonomous and robotics future? That is the way you get to 2 trillion, the way you get to $1 trillion incremental valuation because of autonomous is that way.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because one of our producers, Sebastian Escobar, said, hey,
Question's great.
Waymos are coming to my town where I live in, which is just across from Lower Manhattan. And I'm like, wait, what? And Waymo seem to be expanding pretty aggressively. And so it does seem like folks are going after what could be ultimately the future, right, of Tesla. If really autonomous works, I mean, that's where the growth comes, right, going forward for Tesla, in your view?
Sure, but to that point, like, look, Waymos are $200,000 cars. Like, you're essentially in 5, 6 cities.
Yeah.
When you think about the scale and scope, Tesla, we're talking about 20, 25 cities over the next year when it comes to robotaxi. I mean, that's the whole opportunity. Like, when you think about 20% of what I view as like ride sharing over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be autonomous, no driver. So that's the opportunity that Tesla's going after. But then it goes back to politically, you can have Trump, Duffy, whoever else you want to talk about from administration, not as a friend, but as a foe when you go into the most important chapter of growth and success, what I view on the horizon for Tesla.
Has Elon reached out to you? Have you reached out to him?
I mean, I won't comment there. I would just say that, like, the message has definitely been received by Elon. It's been received by the board. And that was my goal, right? Like, my goal is that sometimes it's like tough love, right?
Yeah.
Like, the point is, like, it comes down to, like, if you don't reprimand or whatever, if you, like, it's like there's good times and bad times. But this is a time, and the stock reflects it, that the board, the adults in the room, whatever you want to talk about, they need to lay the guardrails out from Musk, especially around the political ambition. That is the key.
Dan, how does it feel to have Elon Musk tell you to, in all seriousness, what did it feel like to have him tell you to shut up on his platform? He's got, I don't even know how many followers he has. It has to be over 100 million, hundreds of millions
I think
at this
it's like
point.
220 million.
220 million followers. How did that feel? I mean, I imagine too, his sort of army came after you as well.
Yeah, but I don't, we know each other well. It's like, I don't worry about that. I mean, to me, I just actually view it more as like, he has his right to an opinion. I disagree. I'm a huge supporter of him and Tesla, but I'm more focused on like it creating dialogue. Like, he'll say, shut up, Dan, and I have 100 memes sent to me about different shut up, Dan stuff. And actually a guy in the street yesterday yelled from New York City across the streets like, shut up, Dan. So
Okay.
that's cool. But to me, it's about creating the dialogue, because now it's like, okay, what is the community? What is share? I'm here from shareholders all day, right? That's the important thing, what it means for the Tesla story. That's the whole goal.
I wonder, has the board reached out to you and said, hey, thanks, Stan, for that
Or members of the board?
assist? Yeah.
No, I mean, the good thing is, like, I definitely feel like this message has been received by the board. I think everyone's seen it. And at least now, look, now it comes down to like, okay, are there actions? Like, what does the board do with the next pay package? Remember, the other $56 billion pay package is still in the legal sort of limbo because of Delaware. Proxy still hasn't been, ultimately sent. That's been delayed. So this is a key period of time for the board, for Musk.
Another message that was received for the world of Elon Musk was from the CEO of X, Linda Yaccarino, stepping down as CEO after 2 years. Post on X, decided to step down as CEO. I'll be cheering you all as you continue to change the world. What's your view on that? How do we read that?
I think I have a very positive view of her, right?
Yeah.
Besides the fact that she's a Penn State, or we are, but
all right, pull back. Let's
my view is she turned around X She navigated massive political storm, right? I think very few people could have done. The advertising, I think a lot of it has rebounded. There's still obviously clear headwinds. But I think like this is like, look, it's huge shoes to fill. Like it is a big hole, her leaving, because she has a unique background because of advertising, because of her personality. I think she got along very well with Musk. So it is a huge, what I view as it's a negative, but now it comes down to like who fills that role.